There we are.
Yeah, I'm already recording.
I forgot this was going to be recorded.
Okay, welcome everyone. Please, Zoe.
Okay, yeah, welcome to everybody, and delighted to welcome our guest for this evening, Hannah Silva from London, and real pleasure to have her here with us. I know that she'll be known to many people here. So yeah, London-based sound artist and performer with a background in choreography. And the last time I saw her was in Bratislava, in Ars Poetica, where I know some people here have been, in happier, more more physically social times, and it's a delight to have her here with us this evening. So she's currently on a 3-year Leverhulme fellowship at Queen Mary in London. We'll ask her a bit about that later on, and yeah, very happy to have Hannah with us here to share her work, and then we'll be talking to her afterwards. So yeah, Hannah, thank you very much for coming, and yeah, please show us what you have.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Zoe, and yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. And yeah, it's really nice to see some familiar people and new people to me, and it's, I don't know, it feels a little bit strange for me to be doing this right now, because I mean, not only with lockdown but also with just life over the last few years, I feel like I've been hiding a bit. So some of the stuff I'm going to play is from a few years ago, partly because I haven't done any new work of that kind in the last few years. I've been doing other kind of writing, but more like radio plays and novel writing. And to introduce why I've not been doing so much sound poetry, or what I have been doing for the last year and a half, I thought I'd start by playing you a little improvisation with me and my son. And he's now 1.5 years. It's been quite a full-on time because I have him on my own now, and I've been meaning to record him like for the whole, all of his life so far, and I really haven't done it. So this has been a great prompt because I've started recording him now, and I did record him about 1 year ago, and I want to play a little bit of that as well. So I think I'm going to share my screen and we'll see if this works. So, yeah. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to play is just, it's just silly really, but it's just an introduction to my life right now. And it starts with some sounds of me and my son from when he was only a few months old, and then there's a little cut, and then there's some more recent things. So yeah, this is just letting you into what my world sounds like at the moment. And this is yesterday. Man. Stuck. Up.
Snake. Snake. What's that? Tree. What's that? Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Oh, that's that. And yeah, then something totally different. But yeah, I enjoyed that, thinking around language as a virus and just hearing language develop and starting to enjoy sounding words for the first time in a being's life. So other things I thought I'd play you. This next track is, we recorded it as part of a record that I made a few years ago called Talk in a Bit, with a record label, Humankind Records. We recorded it in Switzerland, and we basically just improvised. So with the sound stuff, I was kind of improvising, or I was reorganizing sounds that I already have. And I guess the improvisation when it came to language was mostly about the timing and the way in which we played with each other. So this track, anyway, this isn't on the record. So I'll play this one. It's part of a sequence.
Drown. Drown down. Drown down. Own. Drown down. Own. One. Drown down. Own. One. Someone. Join. 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 I am going to be to going. Am I joy? Joy. Joy. Talk. Talk. Take these words and make some sense for you. 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 This speech.
And this next one is an extract. We made it for the record, but it's coming from a solo show called Schlock that I made. And Schlock, I spliced. Well, I kind of rewrote 50 Shades of Grey by partly putting it together by a novel by Kathy Acker, but also kind of telling the story of Kathy Acker's final struggle with cancer. This is a while before Olivia Lang did Crudo, by the way, in my defense. She also rewrote Kathy Acker. So this little extract is just working with the sound, I guess, of cancer and the attack of cancer.
C-section, because I'm gonna fiddle. I get the sharp and half, half a second. That woman to the head, to the body, that kind of breast, her mate's got to my son, and Dermot's going to able him, Dermot's coming, oh, tap this country, my name, I'm going to page pass, kind of my civil, I'm going to drop out the kind of tantalize, kind of my dog, kind of my ten, kind of my misses, kind of my bosses, kind of substitutes, kind of make
So me and the percussionist Julian Sartorius, kind of, when we did that live, or doing like, we kind of did it like a competition. So it, you know, one of us would always feel like we'd won at the end of it, but you know, sometimes we won. It was a bit of a battle. Then I'm going to play you one that again is very old as a piece, and I keep reinventing it or making it in different ways. And this is a version that I made for the record. And it started from a documentary that I saw years ago that was about prosthetic limbs. And this documentary was made in the States, and it was very celebratory of the fact that they were sending soldiers who'd lost limbs in war, they were sending them back into war with prosthetic limbs. And it was very, very positive, and they kept saying this is a positive thing. Amputation is the first step in rehabilitation. Also told a story of a little girl who'd chopped the leg off her doll and gouged its eye out, and her father had come back from war, from Iraq, with a lost leg. So one of the things I wanted to just extract a few sentences from this documentary, sentences that I guess had shocked me but had been contained within this very bright light piece, and reduce them to noise. So I took 40% of those with prosthetic limbs will go back into war. I made that into or it or e or it or e or it or a it or. So I took the vowel sounds and also found this rhythm with it, and then gradually restore meaning back to it. And yeah, this is the version that I did with the band. Prosthetics. Back into war, back into war, back into war. Amputation is the first step in rehab. In rehabilitation. Amputation, but it's the first in rehab. In rehabilitation. First in rehabilitation. It's a positive thing. Amputation is the first step in rehab. In rehabilitation, but it's first step in rehab. Rehabilitation. Little girl. Rehabilitation. Little girl. Amputation is the first step in rehabilitation. Step in rehab. A little girl. Rehabilitation. It looks like it wants first step. It's just like her first step in rehab. First in rehab. Rehabilitation. 40% of those with prosthetic
limbs will go back into war, 40%. A little girl cuts. Little girl cuts the eye out, an arm off her doll. It looks like a monster, she says. It looks like a, she says, back into Asian is the first step in rehabilitation. It's the first step in rehabilitation. It's the positive thing. Asian is the first step in rehabilitation. It's the first and reha cuts the eye out and arm off her doll. First step in reha. Looks like a monster now. She says. Looks like a bug. It's a positive thing. It's a positive thing.
Yeah, that's also with Julian Sartorius. I don't know, and then kind of just for fun, I thought I might play you something again that hasn't been published anywhere, and was basically me screaming, again with the musicians, and I was it's a piece about Artaud, and I've always wanted Tomomi Adachi, a sound poet. I'll play our duet in a minute, but we've been wanting to make something kind of informed by Artaud for a while, about organs, and I'm really interested in the way in which doctors documented and Artaud's friends kind of documented how he used his voice in his later life, and how living constituted a performance of kind of rhythmic belches and hiccups, and he sounds like a really lovely, funny person as well, which I think doesn't usually come across when we hear about Artaud. But he'd just invite friends around and then get them to come and join in articulating sounds while he chopped at a block of wood with an axe. But anyway, this is not any of my dreams in terms of this, but it's just me screaming. It's not available anywhere. So here we go. Thank you. Yeah, no idea why that. And then, and apologies if you've seen this already. I'm going to show you a video recording of Tomomi Adachi, a duet that I did with Tomomi, who is an incredible sound poet from Japan. And he, I might just play it and talk over it if that's all right, because it's a little bit long. So Tomomi has designed these shirts that we're wearing, and they've got, they've got infrared sensors on them, on the arms, and then we've got a flex sensor on the hand, which but this is just your it works. So now I'm manipulating around with them. Then we switch over controls. So Tomomi's speaking, but I'm manipulating his speech.
I have a recurring nightmare in which I'm being forced to kill someone, but of course I cannot. It's the same every night. I wake up, it's dark, and even I feel I don't touch anything. I'm far away. I remember something small, something I have to do, something that I have forgotten. And the palpitations begin. I am complete, but I am more alone. It's darker, far from everything. The sun is cold. I am forgotten. I close my eyes and go under.
Because an asteroid, it doesn't control the orbit of anything else. This diminutive world doesn't deserve to be and shouldn't be called a planet. It dilutes the meaning of the word.
Bigger than an asteroid. It doesn't control. It doesn't control everything else. Doesn't deserve. Should it be called? The meaning of the word. The sun is in the center of Pluto's orbit. Pluto's orbit is oval-shaped. Pluto's orbit is Pluto's orbit is
Oh, that was really great. Thank you, Hannah, for sharing all those things. They're fantastic. And yeah, really, and what a lovely selection of your work, because
Fantastic. Zoe, your microphone.
hello? Hello,
Yeah.
hello?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you, Zoe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I mean, it was a great selection of your work, because I think it well, it really shows, I suppose, what I always love about it, which is the way that it's kind of dealing with the body at all of these edges. And so the body, you know, on the edge of sort of thinking about disintegration, or you know, actually being sort of taken to pieces when you're thinking about prosthetic limbs and so on, and you know, the body sort of attacked by illness, and then the body on this border with machines and AI in that last, you know, and so it seems you're always exploring these kind of limits of the body. And so it was lovely to hear also in that first piece you're playing with language with Reese, and just you know, what that process of it sort of collaborative exploration is. And I wondered if you could just say a little bit more about that, yeah, about that, the kind of the process that you undertake, and actually how your you know, your background is in choreography, isn't it? It's sort of thinking about movement. How does it come into that?
I think I've always wanted, you know, I've always wanted to make the body speak. or prevent it from speaking, or just somehow looking at that intersection of speech and physicality. I mean, when I was studying choreography, I think one of the first things I wanted to do really was get dancers to use their voices, and I always wanted to put them in the most painful, difficult positions, or give them the most acrobatic, difficult sequence, and get them to speak whilst doing it. Just trying to find all these kind of tricks to make the voice have to sound bodily, and have to become rooted in the body, I guess. I mean, like, I remember doing a little project a while ago with an opera singer, and this opera singer was too much of an opera singer. I don't know. We needed to mess him up a bit. We needed to do something to make it difficult, because he was too skilled. I remember with the person I was working with at the time, kind of trying all these different ways to put him in pain. So like getting this opera singer lying on his back, and gave him a chair to hold, and they were like, no, that's not good enough. All right, we need to get a table on top of him. So he put a table on top of him, and then he had to hold the table up whilst he did our vocal score. And then it was working, because then he was like forced to engage his body, and we were forced to kind of hear that struggle. Maybe I'm interested in the struggle to speak.
That's interesting, because I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking what you were doing with Reese at the beginning. It was almost like exploring that range that's there before you start to put it under pressure at all. That everything else might be a kind of narrowing down of that. I was thinking. Yeah,
it is. That's a really weird thing about him, kind of finding language. So now he's just popping out new words all the time, and he obviously, he relishes it, and he loves shouting words. But in a way, we lose the before speech noise. There was so much of that kind of gobbledygook noise, pre-speech babble that I love. He does less of that, so it's quite nice when I can get him back to playing with those sounds, and he enjoys that as well. But it's that, I suppose, that human desire to communicate and to be understood sometimes maybe gets ahead of the desire to just play and sound and make noise for the sake of sound. Even though now, like he's so good with language and words that, if I haven't understood a word that he's saying, he'll get really quite frustrated. And even if I repeat it back to him in exactly the same way that he said it, that's not quite the word, and he knows it. He knows that he's not pronouncing it right. And I have to kind of spot which word he's aiming for and name it back at him correctly. Otherwise he gets quite frustrated.
Yeah, great. And so in terms of your process, do you see it, so does it have both of those elements in it, the pressure and the play? Is it sort of trying to produce both of those?
Yeah, definitely. It's trying to find meaning, but it's often trying to restore meaning that's been lost. And I suppose I think the delightful thing about hearing a kid discovering new words is they're discovering meaning as well, aren't they? And it's so full of meaning. And I think by the time you get a bit older, we've used these words over and over and over again, and they stop having meaning, and also we stop kind of sensing them and feeling them and sensing them in our mouths. We're just always trying to jump to interpretation. I think I like to take the sense out of words and language, and reduce it down to its vowel sounds and consonant sounds and bodily sounds, but then to bring the sense back, but for it to actually have sense now, or to have a different kind of meaning that we don't get when we just throw language and slogans and sayings and inaccuracies, I suppose, of
How does that relate to writing, or how do you think of writing?
That is writing.
Yeah.
How does that not relate to writing? I mean, that is writing, right? and we write out loud, and I'm just always interested in expanding you know, how we understand the word writing. I mean, like not that I'm the first person to say so, like, you know, yeah, Zoë that talked about that, so all that, but you know, I mean, yeah, I think well, for a start, if we're poets and we're, you know, supposed to be reading our work out loud, then, you know, every time we read it out loud, we're writing it in that space and with that voice that we have on that day, and the breath we have on that day, and the audience and the energy, and, you know, all the little squares on our screens. But you know, we have to write it. We can't just read it out as if it's something done. You know, we have to kind of inscribe it in the air. So yeah, and you know, I always see the conscious parts of the ways in which we might use our voice and breath and body as integral to writing. You know, that is part of the writing.
Yeah, sort of embodied writing in spaces, and yeah, and yeah, and so what does that do to the space, or how is that important in terms of?
It changes the space, doesn't it? Yeah, you can't necessarily see it, but I feel like writing and speech, you know, carves patterns into the space.
Yeah.
Which I guess is why it's so fun to work with Mummy on his shirts, because then we can see it a little bit more, and you know, you can put a word out there, and then you can move it, move it in the space, and we can quite, you know, in a little bit more literally, we can write with our bodies, and the bodies become an instrument.
Yeah. So do you feel it's just that's like a more it's making something more evident that is there anyway? So when you're sort of moving those sensors, you're feeling like it's making something sort of obvious or literal that's part of writing anyway, rather than being a distinctly different thing.
Yeah, I don't really see it as a different thing. I think it's an extension, or I suppose it's a way of building in a you know, in a more three-dimensional way, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to see the words in the air, whether or not, you know, I'm moving them around. Yeah. My baby is now awake, but she seems all right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's an astonishing piece, and you know, really lovely to see it again, and I suppose that, you know, that aspect of collaboration, I mean, that's a sort of three-way collaboration, isn't it? It's you and Tomomi and AI, and how
definitely.
How did that change things? Because you
it's such,
collaborate,
you know, it's so the early stages as well, and you know, Tomomi and I only had about a week making that piece together, and part of that time was me getting to grips with how these buttons on, you know, on the wrists work, and just figuring out, you know, literally how it worked. So I'm, you know, hopefully we'll be able to make more work in the future. That was the plan over the last month, but it hasn't happened, and things are still being cancelled. But yeah, technology, I mean, technology, it's always got to help doing what you're doing anyway, I think. I think it can't replace anything. Like it becomes a kind of bridge between speech and between the bodies, and you can't kind of rely on it. You can't, you know, I don't want to do anything that just involves pressing a button and leaving, and I'm quite happy to use any technology that I can reproduce just acoustically, or I can just do with my voice. I guess part of the reasons I quite like working with loop stations is they're so simple.
Yeah.
So you can really compose live. And yeah, I've never, you know, when you take the kind of thing that Tomomi and I are doing further, or obviously you see lots of artists who are really, you know, really amazing with technology, and they take it very, very far, but sometimes for me, then I lose, you know, the speech and the voice and the sound, and it can just go into electronica.
And maybe you lose the fun as
The
well.
fun, yeah, and I think that's something like Tommy and I were just starting to discover that kind of playful thing where, you know, yeah, you can kind of tweak a little sound out of somebody. I think it's really exciting for an audience, or for me as well, you know, to see like where does it come from, you know. So that word gets said and then it gets changed by the hand, or then it, you know, it gets transposed, or it, you know. So I suppose maybe again it's about kind of seeing the writing happening.
Yes.
Yeah, seeing it and hearing it and knowing where it's all coming from and how it's being built, which you can't see entirely with that piece, but yeah, those are the moments that I find most fun, I think, when we're really just using our bodies to write.
Yeah, and the being planets as well, and
being planets and having orbits
Yes.
places, and again that's something that I feel like we just started to explore, and you know, there's lots further I'd like to take it.
Oh, it's really fantastic. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure other people will have questions as well. I just wanted to ask you one more, which was really just about how you came to this area that you're working in. So, you know, how did you end up discovering the thing it is that you do? You know, was that a particular contact or hearing something, or?
No, it was mostly from music. So I quit music. I started doing this music degree in Amsterdam, and then I quit it after a year. And I stopped playing, you know, I was playing a wind instrument and I stopped that, but I kept using my voice. So I kept doing articulation techniques, things like double tonguing, like that kind of stuff. I just
sorry, which wind instrument? The recorder.
Yeah,
I'm a recorder player also.
They played it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to be the best in the world, and then I decided no.
The recorder is an unfairly pilloried instrument.
It is, right?
It's a beautiful instrument.
Yeah. Yeah, so I took, I mean, it's quite nice. I think the interesting thing about the recorder, it is quite close to the human voice. And again, it's a very simple instrument, and you have to do a hell of a lot to make it sound good. You know, it's all about the technique and the way in which you play it. So yeah, I took some of those techniques and just kept using them in voice. And I'd made this sound composition that I then re-listened to Berriot's sequenza for voice, and recognised quite a lot of the things that I'd done, and that the sequenza was, you know, I'd heard that when I was you know, a teenager. So in a way, so it was coming from music, and then I was at Dartington College of Arts, and Olka Linzan, great person, was hanging out in the stacks. I worked in the library, and told me about sound poetry, and I was like, what? I was like, is your work coming from sound poetry? I was like, no, but let me find out about this. So it was more like I was starting to composing with speech, I guess, and I think my approach generally has a bit more of a music background to it than some other sound poets, or than a kind of heritage of sound poetry. But yeah, so that was where it started.
Great.
And I wanted to add something to that, because I had the impression that you usually work with musical parameters in a way, especially with a very fixed rhythm. And I was thinking that there's something in the liner notes of your record, Talking a Bit, where it's, and I really like that. It says that the record is experimental yet accessible. And I don't think that's necessarily an opposition, but usually there's an opposition of, I mean, I think it's possible to do something that is easy to understand, but is made in experimental ways, but usually it's more difficult. But I like that, and I wanted to know specifically what's the role of some elements as rhythm, for example, that I think it makes people engage in a closer way while at the same time you are doing very strange things. Or the same with the performance with Tomomi, which is very funny. I mean, you can. I mean, you can't know anything about some poetry or whatever, but it's funny to take a look. So, how do you blend consciously or unconsciously those elements?
I mean, it's not conscious. I've never tried to make anything accessible. And I didn't write that in the cover either.
Yeah, it's the life notes. Yeah.
That's the producer. Like, come on, people, give it a go.
Yeah, it sounds like that.
Yeah. But you know, like actually thinking back to Dartington Days, it's reminding me of Olka. Hi, Olka, if you ever see this, he's brilliant. So he was performing this like neo-Dadaist crazy noise things, and he'd perform it on the hill of Dartington and get all of us BA students, you know, young students, 20-year-olds or whatever, standing in a circle around him, and he'd hand out like plastic chickens for us to wave and things to make noises with, and we all took it very, very seriously. And then he went down the road to the pub in Totnes and performed the same stuff on an open mic night. And the people watching, he'd never heard anything like it, and they were falling off their chairs laughing. And it was amazing. And I was like, oh, this is it. You know, you got it, like, permission to react to this stuff. You know, we don't have to go, this is very fascinating, Dadaist performance, yeah. You know, these are reactions to something which is absurd, like ridiculous, funny, playful, you know, and so human, right? Like, and yeah, so it was exactly the same piece, but it came alive in a totally different way. So sometimes it's just about permission, which I need to give myself as well, and remember when I'm performing. And it, you know, it often comes a bit later. Like, it took me quite a while to get the hang of the technology with Tomomi. So it was only probably by this performance that I showed that we were starting to be a bit more playful with it. And I'd love to take that further and keep doing that. But, you know, sound poetry, I mean, you're making noises. Like, it doesn't get more playful and silly than that, you know. Like, so yeah, I mean, and the rhythm thing and the music and that thing, yeah, that's my interest. That's what I like. I like finding rhythms out of speech. I like finding that the kind of the natural emphases that we put in language, and then constructing rhythms out of it and messing around with that. I like listening to intonation of speech and melody, yeah, that's just my ear, I guess.
But you also use some pentatonic like scales or something like that for the sound composition?
Nah.
I mean, not intentionally.
No, it's like
I did. You know, Schlock does some harmonies. You know, I did some just very kind of light harmony stuff beneath some of the things I was putting on top of it. So I have like a piece called Pain, that's all the instances of the word pain in 50 Shades of Grey. It's like, not after that painful interview, this nonsense called pain, stuck in prison, pain isn't just not painful, etc. And that goes over the top of harmony, of kind of chords in the voice that I build up the loopation.
I thought that piece, Pentatsi, or I don't remember the name, or Pentatsi or something like that. Or one of the pieces that you show, that was an old piece you told about it, that really, really wonderful sounds, amazing composition, like electroacoustic or concrete. And and I just perceived that kind of like a Dorian scale in music.
I like modes. I like modal scales.
Modes,
yeah.
Like in that I didn't perceive the same thing in the actions movement, you know, and how you connect your movements with your sound.
I think what I showed you with Tomomi is very rough, you know, it's really beginning. It's very much work in progress for me. Tomomi is very accurate with the use of body, and it's beautiful, and it's like a kind of sign language. I really admire it, and I'd love to do more towards that. You know, I started exploring a bit of that in Schlock as well, and you know, I love the concept of sign language as well. I really love where, you know, movement and gesture has meaning and is another way of writing. But you know, I think I'm a long way away from what I'd like to do with that, and I'd like to work more with Tomomi on that. Definitely, because at the moment, you know, it's very unthought in some ways. It's quite instinctive, and it was also me just realizing that I needed, or the way I decided to do it at that point anyway, was to use a kind of similar gestural language to Tomomi, because it just felt like that worked with the technology and with the design of the shirts, and because Tomomi had put the sensors on their body in a way that made sense for how Tomomi moves and the kind of use of the hands and gestures that Tomomi has. You know, they were on the same place in my body. It wasn't designed for my body, it's designed for Tomomi. And somehow I found like I had to do similar movements to Tomomi to play that instrument. You know, it's an instrument that Tomomi's made for themselves, like not
Yeah, but it doesn't. I feel that in movement, it doesn't have the same silence that you give in the sound. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs more silence. Yeah.
Or mystery. You know,
Yeah, definitely.
Or secret.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, that's definitely that, and that's something that I think I also find quite difficult when I'm improvising with another person. Especially, you know, in a way, someone coming more from sound poetry, which is not Tomomi. I mean, Tomomi's also a composer, so that's not Tomomi's sense. But when you're just improvising, it's quite typical to not leave that kind of space, both in sound and in movement, I think. But yeah, I totally agree. I'd like to choreograph that kind of work much more and work with silence and stillness. Definitely.
Yeah, or for music, you know, when you choose like a moment, and you know that there is like a lot of movement that you will not play in a way, you know, like
yeah, absolutely, like it's there, you know,
yeah.
it's in the energy of the space, but you don't,
yeah,
you know,
kind of silence
yeah.
and
Yeah.
But
absolutely. I'm a big fan of writing silence. Yeah.
Yeah, and in sound, I think you really like arrive to make a wonderful spaces of dreaming and of wow, really fantastic. Wonderful.
It kind of brings back to stillness though sometimes. I mean, I love Tomomi's work, and I love playing with the body, but sometimes there's nothing better than being still. You know, the body's still there.
Isn't there the
I have a
sense
question
that
as well. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Sorry, yeah,
after
just a
you.
quick one. Yeah, that using that kind of technology that and not being familiar with it gives the piece something as well. It might be the sense of that opera singer again. You know, you don't want to become too kind of slick with it and get to know it too well, do you? Because once you know all the tricks, then you lose something there, don't you? I don't know. Is that not a kind of danger?
But also that technology, you can't plan what sound is going to come out. You can plan what sound you put in.
Okay.
I suppose you could even do some kind of choreography with the body, but it's still going to be very unpredictable in the way in which the sound is manipulated.
Right.
Yeah.
And can I just ask, what's on the screens on the two monitors? I mean, because that was another aspect. I just wonder what you were looking at, or what was coming off the screens.
Yeah. So Max MSP is the program that we were using. I don't know if any of you know it. So I am useless at programming. This is very much Tomomi's world. I'm just trying to see if I've got in my folder, then I can show you something. So Tomomi designed this ages ago, and Max MSP now has different versions and is easier in some ways to use. So their initial design of it is really complex. I'm just having a look and seeing if I've got it anywhere.
Also, the question I had about that, Hannah, related to Jeff's in a way, is in my ignorance, I didn't really understand what was going on there. Like, if you could explain in terms of, you guys were saying things and that it was, you were able to affect it with your movement. Is that, I wasn't quite sure what was going on.
Yeah. So we've got the radio mics on. So yeah, the raw sound is what we're saying into the mics, and then we're manipulating it through movement. So on our shirts we had, I don't know if you saw those sensors on the arms and down the front. Those are infrared light sensors. So they trigger sound through the distance. So if you're putting your hand in front of the sensor, you trigger it, and you trigger it by proximity, by coming kind of close and further away. So you can make a sound and then move it, if you like, or then add an effect to it. And we're selecting some of the different kinds of effects we were using, whether it's a kind of a combination of reverb and distortion. And then there's a flex sensor on the hand as well, which you can reverse a word through moving that. So you can say a word and then you can move your hand and it will reverse the word.
Wow.
And it did something else as well, which I've now forgotten. It's been too long since I've played with it. Yeah, so and then there's a lot of different combinations of buttons on the hands which switch to the different kinds of effects that we were using. So that was the slightly trickier thing for me to work with. But I did some performances as well without the laptop, and it's quite nice to come out from behind that desk and, you know, not have the laptop in front of you. And that was quite fun. I did one in London on my own at Battersea Arts Centre, where I got the audience I gave them instruments. And then I could also go near the audience and use their bodies to trigger sound through being near me. Yeah.
I have a question, if you can hear me still. Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for sharing that work. And I wish I bought a pen rather than a bottle of wine. In terms of the final performance, which, lots of people are sort of crowding in on that, because like the rest of the work you played was impeccable. And I think the last piece sort of raised lots of questions in terms of the technology you're using and stuff. It's two questions really, but had you thought of rendering the performance you did in the form of text or score that could be produced or not produced accurately after? And had you thought of doing it at more distance? Because the magic of technology is that you can do things over distance, and you were in like really close proximity and feeding off each other like performers. But surely the magic of technology is that you don't need that proximity. So like, would there be a way to boost it so you could be in completely different sites, reacting to each other with two completely different audiences, creating a text which then becomes... So anyway, yeah, I'll stop there. I think I've raised them.
Yeah, on the last one, definitely. I don't know how much Tomomi's played with that. I mean, it involves some really good tech setup, I think, and no time delay in the sound, I think, or just finding a different way of improvising that doesn't require those things to be perfect. But yeah, that's probably something we're going to have to do, because we're supposed to be performing in Barcelona in May, and it's been cancelled again. So yeah, that'll be the next step. Thank you. I know Tomomi's done.
Told us about that.
I think they call it telepathic performances, where
and
they perform in one location and someone else performs in a different location.
Because I think with what you were doing, it was really cool. But just that last performance was really cool, especially towards the end when you kind of stopped giving a heck. You kind of went for it, both of you, and you got more into it and learned what you were doing and how it worked and how it vibed. It was really cool. But to do it in complete different spaces would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's where you see what technology is, rather than
really. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I'm just, you know, Tommy and I have got to have a meeting about this. So yeah, I think we need to figure it out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, I did really like how that you guys, it got into almost like a collaborative dance and a kind of drama. And I really, that part for me was the kind of the most powerful, because then you had the sound and you also had this kind of sort of, I want to use the word tense, but it wasn't tense, but there was it was acted like this moment of tension. But it was like really, it was really powerful when it became like that. It became something else for me then, something very different. It was almost like a play of sorts, but with under an aegis of this sound performance.
It's like a celestial battle almost. It kind of became some kind of interplanetary kind of primordial, you know, we sing the birth of the planet somehow in that through sound, you know, thinking of the sound of the planets, whatever, what was that called? The sound of the spheres, whatever. Well, the music of the spheres, isn't it?
Yeah, I enjoy that as well. Yeah, again, I want to do more of that. And it's, I suppose, that thing, the proximity sensors is quite fun in how your bodies can play each other. So you know, you can bring parts of your body near to the other person's sensors and manipulate them. And I you know, and breaking that down and giving it space would be quite nice as well, because you know, Tommy can throw out a sound and I can change it in a way that they might not want me to, or you know, I can steal it and make it into something else. Yeah.
I was also minded of Hannah Wiener's kind of clairvoyance, you know, the way she used to see words. I wondered why, because you were talking about how you saw these words in front of you kind of appearing in some way, and the way you can manipulate that. I wonder whether, how that would relate to her kind of sense of clairvoyance, kind of seeing writing on people's foreheads and seeing words materialize in the air. You know, I just wondered what technologically, you know, that has brought to someone like Wiener's notions of clairvoyance. I don't know if you know. Do you know? I'm sure you know.
I do. Probably not enough to answer that question. Yeah.
I'm not sure I can add anything to it. But.
But that, it's. I mean, I playing with those concepts. I think, I think technology does feel like a kind of magic, in some ways, or it's a way of making a spell, and maybe a way of making visible those notions. But going back to, I think I didn't answer the first bit of Chris's question, which is that I think the question about making it, do I write it down basically, or make it visible or use school, and not really, no. I'm good with the sound and the ears, very bad visually. I'm not a visual poet. I mean, if someone, you know, give me a score, like, I'll have fun interpreting it and making it into noise. But I don't generally work with scores. I just haven't found my voice in that respect. So my page-based work tends to be, more traditional words. Not that I do much of it. I'm doing a novel now. So
I don't think you need to. You know, your work's excellent as it is.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, people always ask me that, but I'm just not got the eyes.
It's just rendering what you did into a score for other people to perform would be really interesting, because that's part of the technology of writing, isn't it? Even if they did it, even if they fucked it up, you know, it'd be worth. Be worth doing.
If anybody wants to, please go ahead.
No, but sometimes technology with soul or without soul, I don't know, like fire is the most technologic thing in a way. What kind of that the technology who recover magic. We talked about Eugenio Tiselli the other day about kind of moment of technology brings you another possibility of mystery. It's not like answering or
Yeah.
like
Yeah, there's always that question of, do you make the technology visible or invisible? Yeah, so the piece of Tomomi, it's incredibly visible, covered in wires, and there's the table in front of us. But, yeah, sometimes with solo work, I quite like to make it invisible. You know, sometimes you want to see the magic and we want to kind of guess how some things are made. Other times, you know, you can hide it.
Hannah, I was really interested in where you were getting to with talking about movement and gesture having meaning, but and learning more about your background in choreography. But does that technology then suggest a limit? I don't know, because from what I'm doing, I'm interested in how far you could go with the movement, but are you actually sort of do those shirts kind of tie you down in some particular way and restrict movement?
They do, yeah. I escaped from it quite a bit when I explored it on my own and kind of got out from behind the desk, but I was still trailing wires, and still had a you know, specific spatial requirement for the movement. Not that you have to stick with that actually, and you know, obviously you can push out of it, and not all of the movement that you make has to trigger noise at all. And yeah, that would be nice. But at the same time, obviously, you know, as you all know, like restrictions and rules are quite useful. And I think it's just about, you know, not being trapped by it, but you know, being forced to generate something that you wouldn't otherwise come to because of it. And that's probably where it could go. But definitely with those shirts, you know, it is an instrument, and the time, you know, when I was working with it for a solo piece, I was practicing with it, and I think around that point I was thinking, yeah, if you know, you have to practice it every day like you would a musical instrument, like I used to with my voice. You know, when I was a student or starting to do the sound poetry stuff, I trained. I did vocal exercises and all of that stuff, and I trained every day. And I think that's what we have to do. But you know, whether you're using a technique that already exists, like musicians do, or whether you're inventing your own, yeah,
it was very interesting. Oh, sorry. It was just very interesting to see how distinct your movement languages were between you, and just watching it as movement as well as for what it was producing. And there was something very precise Tomomi did at some point, like a shape that he made in front, and you could tell that this was something that he knew and understood, whereas there was more of a sense of you still kind of exploring the repertoire and the range. But it was fascinating to watch as movement. Let alone what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tomomi definitely has a way of, let's call it writing, with their hands and their gestures, and very, very precise and delicate. And yeah, obviously that's something they've developed over many years. Yeah, I really enjoy. I think Tomomi has a few pieces that are just gesture. Really, you need Tomomi here. This is okay. You invite him for the future. But that's interesting to me as well. Just writing with gesture. It's something that you know, like going, you know, into the academic stuff. Obviously, it's something I'm interested in writing about, the way in which poets do that in performance, and the way, you know, ways in which, you know, some poets will. I mean, that, like I think you know, the essay that I think you've read there, I was writing about Lem Sisay's work, and Lem Sisay has a piece where he starts just doing this gesture, and he just keeps building and pushing it further and further and further, and this is before any language has come out whatsoever. And for me, that's writing. You know, it's not illustrating language. It's writing something different. And I think, you know, from the beginning of when I was starting to play with this stuff as a choreography student, I guess, I was always interested in the different layers. So I hate the thing that, we'll all do automatically, and lots of poets will do if they don't think about gesture, which is to just emphasize what you're saying with your hands and your body, like it was a small ball, it was a really big ball, it's so boring. It's repeating, it's saying the same thing twice. But when you're doing something different with your body and your voice, or your words, then there's a meaning that comes in between that and that is produced through that, which is a third meaning. For instance, like it's not that precise, but for instance, but I always like those layers.
That's a really important point, because it's not a third meaning. It's like if you sort of liberate yourself from the language and move, then that's part of the meaning. It's not a third meaning.
No, it's part of the meaning. Yeah, I was kind of talking more about if you're using movement as well as speech, and your body is kind of saying one thing and your speech is saying something else, or basically your body isn't illustrating your speech, then it's the combination of those layers that can produce
yeah, sure.
meaning. That's what I meant. But
cool.
yeah, if you're just moving, then that's the writing.
I think Jonathan Burrows' work is just so masterly around gesture, and with Matteo Fagion, but I always find it interesting as a visual language.
I saw both sitting duets by Jonathan Burrows as a student, and loved it. Probably always stayed with me. I think they were using a John Cage score. They were interpreting it, the two of them, through this gestural language, and I absolutely loved the precision of it. And I always remember them saying in the talk afterwards, so it's both sitting duets, but there's one point in which they stand up, and they just said something about, you have to have, if you have a rule, you've got to break it once. And I've always remembered that. To break the rule, but also that they were cracking up. It was so funny, the performance that we saw. They were just making each other laugh. I think when they were going wrong or something like that, they just kind of smiled. They just couldn't help laughing, and it was so funny. And I mean, that's a whole other layer, I guess, that was going on between them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Hannah. Can we go back to the first pieces? I heard drummers. Are they real or?
She's a Swiss percussionist.
Okay, I didn't got that. Sorry. And did you record that first, after, together?
Together.
We
put it out together. Yeah, I mean, and then there was a mix. Obviously, it had a bit of editing and play, but we did it together. Yeah, it was a really nice collaboration with Julian and with the other musicians that I worked with on that project. And basically we improvised for a week and then made these tracks.
I heard in one piece I heard like two drummers or two sequences of rhythms, might be.
Well, in prosthetics, Julian found some different rhythms.
Battery,
Sorry?
We're playing drums, and someone.
The drum kit.
The drum kit.
Yeah.
But I thought that I heard like two different line of rhythms.
I mean, it was quite possibly. We would have kind of layered it up and played with that in the edit. Yeah.
And very polyrhythmic. I love that.
Yeah, and that rhythm, which is coming from the speech, which is 40% of those. To go back into 40%. It's a great rhythm that even a percussionist is like, course. What is that? Which is nice.
And also in the first piece, I think that there was a double bass, or
Well, we had a cellist. So there was a cellist.
Oh, cellist.
And there was There's so the information of the musicians. Yeah, it's available online. I won't go through.
It's okay.
But yeah, like
but
yeah, Zeno was on cello.
Is the same album that or
yeah? Oh, a couple of tracks I played you just now aren't on the album. They didn't make it. It's from the same project, but they just didn't go on to the final record, like the Crazy Arto one. But yeah, the rest is on the record. Anyway, it was nice working with Julian. Was quite fun because in the beginning he was totally suspicious of me, and very suspicious of the work, and was saying that he didn't want to do anything political, and he was very uncomfortable with the content. And then we just started improvising and playing together and making sounds, and he was like, "Oh, I get it. You kind of use your voice a bit like I play drums." And
yeah, cool. Wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hannah, I was just also was really interested in the thing you're doing in the British Library archives, the interviews with Black British poets and performance. Do you want to say a bit about that?
That was part of my PhD project. So I did a collaborative PhD with the British Library and Stirling University, and part of that I made an archive for the British Library, which is the archive's called Black British Poets and Performance. It's quite some years ago now, but it's kind of taken until now to get the archive available, I think. And they're really, really long interviews. I mean, long in a brilliant way, but they're like, if we talked for an hour, that was a short one. So yeah, they're really long interviews with contemporary poets, talking about the craft of performance, mostly, which isn't done very much. You know, hopefully we're starting to do that now. But yeah, just really talking about the work, like how they wrote the work and how they studied performance and think about performance, and yeah, all sorts of subjects really. But it was a total privilege, and yeah, they're very exciting interviews. And I mean, like one of my favourites was talking with David J, who was one of my case studies in my PhD. And David J's not written anything down, you know, you can't find it anywhere, but it's a bit of a legend in the performance scene, and was talking about background in hip hop and how they play with words and language, which is really like experimental, and lots of cutting of sounds and reversing and kind of cut up speech, and he was explaining to me how he freestyles and just doing it live, and talking about things that were around us in the recording studio, and riffing on it, and analysing his work for my PhD basically involved coming up with a vocabulary to describe the techniques he was using that you know we don't have language for it. So yeah, I kind of found little diagrams and ways of explaining what, you know, inhaling a word, you know, that's one of the things that he does, you know. So that was IH, inhaled word. But it's flipping great, you know. And I played his work to some academics in Stirling from linguistics, and said, "Oh, so how would you notate this? How would you analyse this?" And they're like, "Wow, don't know, never heard anything like it." Yeah.
So yeah, and because you've got some links to that work on your site, haven't you? But
yeah, there's some little extracts from
interviews.
Yeah. But I think the British Library has actually launched it now. It should be some extracts online, but yeah, they are available now, and I think it's a really exciting resource. I hope people will write books from it, because there was so much that we covered that I'm not able to write about. I'm not going to write about, but it's, you know, it's all there. Yeah.
But it's been said, so it's written.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But there is something, I mean, but seriously, in terms of academic publishing, like, you know, we do need to write about this work.
Yeah.
it isn't going to be preserved otherwise, or it needs to be written about just to expand the ways in which academics think about performance and think about writing and poetry. We're missing out on a huge amount of what's being done and is being done, through only focusing on the same poets over and over again. Especially when people are writing in fields of Black British poetry, it's the same couple of names, and it's so much bigger than that. And we're just missing out on a whole understanding of how to talk about poetry, think about poetry, and then write it and perform it, because it will feed back into practice.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's the sense of coming out of a literature sort of background or training, and perhaps find then from there, how do you find the vocabulary to do that? Where does poetry sit? Because so it's coming to it from performance.
I mean, in a way that's in my view, that's a little bit part of the problem, that we keep sectioning things out. And I know academics want to do that and get excited about saying I work in the field of performance poetry or spoken word or whatever, but I think there's problems with doing that as well. That we're not expanding the fields that are there, and that we're not just looking at poetry. Because it's very rare to find a poet who doesn't read their work out loud.
Sure.
Hannah, hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, I do. Hi.
Yeah, okay, thanks a lot. And I was very interesting, and it was very wonderful to see your work. So I just want to step in this idea of academics and writing, because beside performing, I tried to make a PhD, and my big struggle is to accept the idea that performing, to put out words in the space, is a kind of writing. And this is so incredibly difficult to get this through, because they come, you know what writing is? It is describing in a surface and stuff, and it's such a big step. So maybe I will get in contact with you to have some more inputs about it.
Sure. I mean, that's a pity. I'm sorry if you're coming up against the obstacle, because that's absolutely ridiculous. It's absurd.
Yeah, but it's so it's so evident for us, but to make it through it.
It's very frustrating. No, I mean, I did keep getting pulled back on, people asking me, but you're not doing a metrical analysis. I'm like, do I have to bloody sit there and do a metrical analysis so that I can prove to you that it is so much better to talk about this using musical terminologies and talking about rhythm and not meter? And I'd say, you do. Sometimes you have to prove it. Then you have to go, look, this is making sense. And you also have to go and look at the academic who've done it, and they've done it wrong. And they've analysed performance, and they've used metrical, language to do it. And they've done it wrong, because they are used to hearing a beat landing on 4. They're used to a 4/4 beat, where the poet is landing on the meter. That's not what poets do in performance, especially when you start going into hip hop and rap. It's all about the way in which you work around that beat. And these, academics.
The Greeks did not use 4/4 beat.
Sorry?
The Greeks definitely didn't use 4/4 beat.
No. Well, ballads, that's about it, isn't it? Yeah.
By the way, do you know Bess Anderson, the composer, American woman?
Yes, Bess Anderson.
Yeah, she has a piece that reminded me about one of the pieces we heard in the beginning of yours. I Can Stand It. It's called Hers. So it's very similar. It might be about it. Right.
It's so interesting about the Greeks, because they used to training themselves, the musician, in Phrygian mode. The Phrygian mode, you have 3 undertones in the middle, and then you they pretend that they arrive to ecstasy, of a kind of trance. When they perform for people, they receive some instruction of the Senate in Greece, and they had to play in Dorian or in Phrygian. They had a wonderful master of Socrates. He arrived to stop some struggles in the city, changing the mode for which the orchestra in the city play. Then I feel that it's true. And it's completely incredible. The people that change the mood with the mode. And at the same time, yeah, I feel that kind of Dorian style to show to the people, and that kind of Freudian, I don't know, rehearsal in a way. What are your rehearsal now, Anna?
Nothing. Sorry. Right now I'm writing a novel. And I am trying to think about how to turn my PhD, or how to expand my PhD research into a book, into a monograph. So yeah, I'm thinking about part of that will be a chapter on technology, and probably on this year and Zoom performances, and interviewing poets about this, and about, you know, the difference between performing in your home. So possibly expanding the research to look at all of that. But yeah, I need to do that, and then I'm exploring this novel.
You see it?
No.
Anyone have a question before we start the collective improvisation? Scott, go on.
Yeah, I was just wondering, did Zoe say you were starting a Leverhulme? What's that about?
It started in March, so that was nice timing. But yeah, part of my well, funnily enough, the first year I was intending to do some work with Tomomi, which has been postponed, but hopefully we'll still do. So I want to expand on my work with Tomomi, and then I also want to focus on the academic writing as well, and hopefully get a book from that that's looking at analysing poetry and performance. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's all connected to the things you've been saying.
Yeah. This is what I'm doing. Yeah, and kind of the novel have become part of it as well, which has just been like the way I've been able to write over lockdown. That's something that I've been able to do.
It's interesting that you're right now, and in the short-term future, you're going to be doing a lot of actual writing on paper after what you said, and I wonder if it will refine your views or make you feel there is some sort of difference between articulating. I prefer to use the word articulating sort of into space, or articulating in a way that's almost more finalized on a piece of paper or something. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, but I didn't mean to give the impression, and some people writing about my work, they're like, oh, she doesn't use paper or write anything down. Of course I do, and I always have. And I've written, I don't know, at least 7 radio plays, and plenty of work that's on the page, but I tend to just differentiate between it. So I don't tend to write down the stuff that I perform as a solo performer, or that I work with technology, or that kind of work. Schlock, for instance, I only write that down insofar as I need a record or a reminder of what I'm doing. But I've always had a page-based life, always, that's run alongside this. They're just slightly different things for me. But I was into writing novels before I ever started messing around with my voice.
Yeah, cool. Just last thing I wanted to say was, I just want to say I really loved the piece that you did with amputation and prostheses. The way it would be obvious to you, of course, you know this, but that you chopped words in half, chopped ends off words like their limbs, whatever. But the other thing that I found kind of almost sort of fruitfully hideous about it, it was almost like a dance track at times.
I know. I wanted to hit the clubs.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like...
That's my dream.
It was so strange because of the subject matter.
I know.
And yet empowering.
Yeah.
Perhaps,
Yeah.
So...
But I'm trying not to say with some, whether it's right or wrong, or, and obviously there is something incredibly empowering about somebody getting a prosthetic limb, that's great.
And then dancing with it.
I'm not sure that going back into war is the celebration of that, Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
It might be.
Yeah, I always want to say
it was a bit,
I liked
it was
it
a
very
bit more
much.
cheery than the Pogues.
Yeah, I liked it very much as well, and I liked all the aspects because there was a lot of different aspects to it, and but especially the idea of bringing very serious subject matter parts and also very funny parts together and very improvised, and because you were starting out with the piece with your child, and it really brings us back to the basics of language very much. And I think sound poetry really very often has to do with these basics of language, how we create language in the beginning and just play around with it, and then from there playing around everything else comes. And so it was a lot of fun to listen to that. And of course I enjoyed very much your work with Tomomi Adachi, who I have met a couple of times, and he's a fantastic person, and so I'm looking forward to more of your collaboration maybe.
Yeah, me too.
So it's great to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really amazing, and yeah, thank you, Hannah. And yeah, did you have any ideas for improvising?
No. I have no idea how you do it. Zoe, I'm happy to join in.
But I wanted just to say how much I enjoyed what what
I mean that what you were just talking about, Dirk, in terms of sound before speech. I suppose that's something that I'm thinking about now, so we could think about that perhaps.
Yeah.
Hannah, we usually ask our guests to propose some idea or rhythm or word or procedure or whatever you want to start an oral and sound improvisation. So
okay, yeah, perfect. What is this word? Oh yeah. All right. Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
The dialogue with the baby was fantastic. Huh? In the first piece, there was a dialogue with the baby, and maybe there was much technology and the other works, but in this one, I feel it like different. Huh? It was in a daily basis, like with a lot of like naively. I can read it as everyone. We have this experience with tenderness, no? With a dog, for example, with some animal, with the baby, or somebody say "cuchi cuchi." Tak tak, licky licky. So that I like that work, and I don't understand this the relation with the technology, because maybe it's not needed, but it's okay.
Plug the baby in. Plug the baby in.
Oh God, that sounds sinister.
Turning off the Tower Bridge Road during the Blitz, but it survived. It's still here. It was progress that forced Burma's walls to close, factories to move out, and the workers to slowly drift away. Some bits of old Bermondsey remain, however, and here and there I found a reminder of the Bermondsey I loved and was very proud of. The test of time, mate, has changed very little. Young mate used to stroll through the market as kids, drawn to it by the lovely smell of fruit and veg.
This is a part of Liverpool, a city of nearly 1 million inhabitants, and one of the biggest ports and shipbuilding areas in the world. During the war, it was a target for air raids which laid waste whole areas, but now the city council are rebuilding fast. But one of the most interesting achievements of the council was to establish over 100 years ago public wash houses where, even now, thousands of Liverpool housewives bring their weekly wash. Some of them bring as much as 60 pounds of washing. And though these old prams are the most popular means of transport, you'll often see schools carrying the bundles on their heads. They were started thanks to the work of Kitty Wilkinson, a labourer's wife who used to lend her wash tub to her neighbours. During a cholera epidemic in the overcrowded town, she persuaded the council that the spread of the disease could be stopped if the people could only wash their clothes and themselves properly. So, not long
He used to do all the jelly deals, cutting up, buying. My elder son has things that I'd have to learn. We have ills, summer, winter, or any time, deer or otherwise. We have ills. We are an ill shop and we sell ills. However the price is. Our customers come from far and wide. They know it for years and years. And the potatoes, please. Helen pies up, Joe, please. Take 50, Phil.
Alguien en lugar de mirarse a sí mismo con esta superior percepción interpercibe como raza un y a la corrupción de sus risas.
The power company, hydraulic, London, the strong currents run, strong it wasn't just there to say walls of London's Tower, Leicester Square.
Se miran atónitos en las esquinas, 7 el chileno francés alemán anuncia un día es la tarde que una de encontrarse por la noche, las esquinas miran con esos ojos irritados, desesperadamente, alguien se lava la cara, las manos y pillarse, se baña, se perfuma, se pule, rasura, se también la familia que es un hombre vinca. Días del veranito de San Juan llegaron con retraso interceptados por la guerra, descargando su cansancio chino y los hombros, usan sus terribles y letales armaduras fotoquímicas, sus escudos de soles, sus penachos de nieblas, toda la radiación solar de sus respaldos, hombre victorioso, día 23. La noche se exhibirá su
Defending item of the culture. I have to say, actually, I got it pretty easily because the whole thing was a huge laugh. I was totally fooled. Totally fooled. In the whole building, it seemed knew about it, and certainly they soon realised that plug-ins here, I never realised. And the reason why it works, I think, so brilliantly, is because there I was, just doing my ordinary job in my own, doing comes naturally, if you like. It was the end of a long studio session. It was the 24th programme we'd recorded in the week. We were all getting tired, and so it was just so natural. So when things began to go wrong, I just thought, well, it's the end of the week and things just go wrong.
So Carol was in on it. Did you record in on it? Obviously the contestants were in on it, but Richard Wiley.
Please welcome new contestants Amanda Richards and Richard Max.
You weren't embarrassed for the moment, really? No, I'm on now. I'm on. I don't believe it. Oh, well, let me speak to her. She wants to say hello.
He's on the programme. He's on the line. Oh, everybody, where's Brian? We're on the air. You'll see this later on.
Yourself. Yes,
Sueña que alguien encuentra el fresco a la brisa cubiertos con vino encapotado, esos ojos rojos como pechos de mármol, noche abierta, cubierta hasta la noche turbada. Si alguien le pusiera un ojo, la hallaría en las nubes, rayos y trenes pasan mientras como la noche es llena de agua, se manosea la noche, no pasa la noche. Envía sus pies de luz en el recuadro de la noche, pone la noche su perfil de ébano en el horizonte del día.
Puedo ver el horizonte.
Brillante es la noche, colgada por la lluvia.
Puedo ver el horizonte. I can see the horizonte.
La noche está brillante.
Great friends. Super fabulous, like all the Wednesday. Marvelous. Thank you, Anna. Thank you much for your work and the inspiration for tonight. And thank you, Zoe, for that presentation. So we present like every month, like one invited of her
Yeah.
magic spell.
I need to make myself join. I'm very sleep deprived, but this has been great. And
Great.
it's good for me.
Good luck, Hannah. It's really tough. It's really tough bringing up kids. So good luck.
Thank you. I enjoyed your
and beautiful work that you did with your boy as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that might be my next project.
It's an ongoing one, isn't it?
Oh, totally. At least.
Thank you, Anna.
At least get a record out of it if I'm not going to get any sleep. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks very much.
Every Wednesday we are here, Anna. If you want to come and talk with that, Chris Paul is invited the 24, and before we have Dirk invite someone.
Federico Eisner is next Wednesday, the March 3rd.
Federico is next Wednesday. Yes,
awesome.
As you told, do you want to prepare us saying something before to sleep?
No, I don't have any clue yet.
Federico will present an abstract of his PhD dissertation, which is also about some.
Oh, no. Something really boring. No. Thank you, Hannah. Wonderful.
Welcome back, Hannah. Take care.
See you all next week, and thanks so much, Zoe, also for organizing this session. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you much.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, everybody.
See you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.
Night.
Farewell.